Welcome to Lesson 9, The Heirs of Promise, Prisoners of Hope. The Heirs of Promise, Prisoners of Hope. We get the key text from the book of Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 12. It says, "Return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today I declare that I will restore to you double. I shall repeat, return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today I declare that I will restore to you double." And we get our one to read in Joshua chapter 13 to 21. It contains a long list of geographical the boundary markers that delineate the portions of the land allocated to the tribes of Israel for modern leaders. That was allocated to the tribes of Israel. For modern leaders, this list might seem irrelevant, but they are based on the theological understanding of the promised land that is significant for us today. God was going to give the land to them as an inheritance. It was going to be a gift made in fulfillment of what He promised to their fathers. But they had their part to play too. In this week, we will look theological concept related to the promised land and their spiritual implications for those who claim all the promises found in Jesus. Sunday part, Eden and Canaan. Eden and Canaan. We get the book to read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. It says, And the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, he said, and unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of the wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cast is the ground, for the sake in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of your life. And we see that at creation, God placed Adam and Eve in a perfect environment that was abundant with abundance and beauty. The first human couple met their Creator in the setting of a lovely living space that could provide for all their physical needs. As Abraham entered the land, God ensured him by faith that the land became the land of the promise to him and his descendant. The patriarchs did not really own the land. It was not theirs in such a way that they were able to give it to their children as an inheritance. Rather than it belonged to God as the Garden of Eden and belonged to God. And as Adam and Eve did not do anything that entitled them to the Garden of Eden, Israel had not contributed anything to deserve that land either. The promised land was a gift of God based on his initiative. Israel had no inherent right or a claim to own that land. It was only by God's grace that the Israelites could possess the land. The patriarchs were heirs of the promise until they were fulfilled. We as Christians followers have inherited even better promises that will be fulfilled if we become imitators of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. In Hebrews chapter 6 verse 12, Mandy says, the Lord as a gift. The Lord as a gift. We get the one to read from the book of Exodus chapter 3 verse 8. Verse 8 says, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large unto a land flowing with milk, honey, unto the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. After every basic level, land offers physical identity to her nation. Having land meant freedom. The identity of the chosen people was linked strongly to their dwelling in the land. There was special relationship among God, Israel, and the land. Israel received the land from God as a gift. The chosen people could own the land as long as they were in the covenantal relationship with their Yahweh and respected the precepts of the covenant. The Lord provided the lens through which the Israelites could better understand God. Living in the land would always remind them of a faithful promise and keeping and trustworthy God. As the true owner of the whole earth, Yahweh has the right to assign the land to Israel or to take it away. If God is the owner of the land, the Israelites, by extension, all human beings are strangers and sojourners in the modern terminology. We are all God long-term guests. We can say we are strangers or sojourners. For us to understand better, we may use that we are long-term guests in this land which is not ours, but God has given us as a gift. Tuesday says the challenge of the Lord. The challenge of the Lord. In the book of Joshua chapter 13 verse 1 to 7, verse 1 says, now Joshua was old and stricken in years, and the Lord said unto him, thou art old and stricken in years, there remaineth yet very much land to be possessed. In verse 2, this is the land that yet remained, all the borders of Philistines and all Geshuri. Given that for centuries the Israelites had been living as slaves, their military skills were inadequate for them to conquer the land. Not even their slave masters, the Egyptians, were able to occupy that land permanently. The Egyptians never conquered Canaan completely because of the impregnability of the walled cities. Now, a nation of the former slave is turned to conquer the land that the former master were unable to subdue. That is now the former master, who is Egyptians, and the former slave, the Israelite. They are taught now to conquer the land that even their masters, who were equipped with good skills and militaries, were unable to conquer. If they were to ever possess the land, it will be through God's grace alone, not through their effort. The Israelites can securely live in the land that God has given to them as inheritance. They are the rightful and legitimate tenants of the land under God's ownership. Yet God's initiative must be matched by human response. The first half of the book shows how God gave the land by dispossessing the Canaanite, and the second half report show how the Israelites took the land and by settling it. Wednesday says the Jubilee. The Jubilee. The land was so central to the existence of Israel as God's people that it could not be apportioned as a whole. It had to be divided by tribes, clans, and families in order to prevent it from becoming the possession of few leading Levites. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, verse 1, it says, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, say unto them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord." Verse 3, 6 years thou shalt sow the field, and 6 years thou shalt prune them. By contrast to 6 years thou shalt, let me repeat in verse 3, 6 years thou shalt sow the field, and 6 years thou shalt prune the vineyard and gather fruit. Verse 4, but in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the Lord, and a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow the field nor prune the vineyard. By contrast with Egypt, where citizens regularly lost their land and became Pharaoh's serfs, the purpose of God for the Israelites was that they could never become indefinity, and nobody outside the clan, the family, could own the land. According to God's plan, the land could literally never be sold. It could only be leased according to its value, established by the number of years left until the next Jubilee. The allotment of the land becomes a window in God's heart. As our Heavenly Father, He wants His children to be generous with those who are less fortunate and allow their lands to feed them. Besides valuing and encouraging hard work, ownership of the land also calls for respect and kindness to those facing financial challenges. Land ownership legislation provided every Israelite with the opportunity to be freed from inherited or maybe self-induced oppressive circumstances and to have a fresh start in life. This is the main purpose of the gospel, to erase distinction between the rich and the poor, employer and the employee, privileged and the underprivileged, putting us all equal footing by recognizing our complete need of God's grace. We all need God's grace either way, whether you have it, you have much money or much wealth, or you don't have. That day, the Lord restored. The Lord restored. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 16, thus saith the Lord, refrain the voice from weeping, and thine eyes from tears, for the work shall be rewarded, saith the Lord, and they shall come again for the land of the enemy. In Jeremiah 24, verse 6 says, For I will set mine eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them, not pull them down, and will plant them, and not pluck them. During the Babylonian exile, The Israelites experienced not only the sad reality of being rootless, but also the promise that their relationship with God, now made concentrate through the promise of the land, was not conditioned on or limited to possessing the land. When the Israelites confessed their sins, repented, and looked for the Lord with all their hearts, God fulfilled his promise again. And he brought them back to the Lord as a sign of their restoration. That is, he was still their God even while they were not in the Lord. In the New Testament, the promised land is not mentioned directly, but we are told that the promises of God have been fulfilled in and through Jesus Christ. You can read it in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20. The ultimate fulfillment of the divine promise of the rest, abundance, and well-being of the Lord will take place on the new earth, liberated from sin and its consequences. In that essence, as Christians, our hope is based on Christ's promise that we will return, and after 1,000 years, that is a period in heaven, established as eternal kingdom on the earth made new. This will be the ultimate fulfillment of all the promise about the Lord. When Christ comes after 1,000 years, we will get the ultimate fulfillment of all the promise about the Lord through Jesus Christ. Friday, Father thought, we shall be saved eternally when we enter through the gate into the city. Then we may rejoice that we are saved, eternally saved. But until then, we need to end the injunction of the apostles, fear, unless the promise being left us of entering into the rest, any of us should seem to come short of it. May God help us that we may be prepared to enter onto this land and to also get a fulfillment of the land, the promises of God. May God bless you. Let's meet on the next lesson, the true Joshua. God bless you.